I need to tell you something that happened to me 6 nights ago that has left me unable to sleep, unable to eat, and honestly unable to look at my own spiritual life the same way ever again. I was alone in my prayer room at 2:47 inches the morning, weeping over a question that's been tearing at my soul for months, when Jesus appeared and revealed the single reason why God rejects believers who think they're saved. What he showed me wasn't about doctrine or theology or getting the right answers on some cosmic test. It was something so simple, so obvious, and so completely missed by millions of Christians that when I finally understood it, I felt like I'd been living in spiritual blindness my entire life. The reason God rejects certain believers has nothing to do with their sin, their doubts, or their failures. It's something far more fundamental, far more devastating, and far more common than anyone in the church is willing to admit. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. I'm sitting here in my living room as the sun comes up over Los Angeles, and I can hear the city waking up around me. People heading to work, starting their days, going through the motions of life. And I can't help but wonder how many of them think they're right with God when they're actually building their entire spiritual life on something that Jesus himself will reject on the day of judgment. To understand why this revelation hit me so hard, I need to be completely honest about something that's been haunting me since we started filming season 6 of The Chosen. Despite playing Jesus for years, despite being surrounded by scripture and prayer and worship, I've been watching something that's shaken me to my core. I've been seeing the disconnect between what people say they believe and how they actually live. And it's not just hypocrisy, it's something deeper, something more fundamental. It started 4 months ago when I received a message from a pastor named Michael, who had been in ministry for 23 years. Jonathan, he wrote, I need to confess something that's been eating at me. I've spent over 2 decades preaching the gospel, leading people to Christ, building a successful church. But lately I've been having this terrifying thought: what if I've been doing all of this for the wrong reasons? What if my entire ministry has been about building my own kingdom instead of God's kingdom? What if, on Judgment Day, Jesus looks at me and says he never knew me? I mean, that message hit me like a freight train. Here was a man who had dedicated his entire adult life to Christian ministry, who had led thousands of people to faith, who by every external measure was a successful servant of God. And he was genuinely terrified that Jesus might reject him. But you know what really shook me? Michael continued, I look at my life and I see all the right activities. I preach, I pray, I serve, I give. But when I'm brutally honest with myself, I realize that so much of what I do is motivated by my need for validation, my desire for success, my fear of failure. I love the feeling of people respecting me as a pastor. I love seeing the church grow because it makes me feel significant. I love preaching because it feeds my ego. Is any of that actually for God? Or have I been using God to get what I really want, which is to feel important? Honestly, I read that message dozens of times, and each time it cut deeper because I could see myself in Michael's confession. How many times had I enjoyed playing Jesus because it made me feel spiritual? How many times had I shared my faith because it made me look good rather than because I genuinely cared about the person I was talking to? How many of my prayers were actually about connecting with God versus performing spirituality for an audience? But that was just the beginning. Over the following weeks, I started receiving similar messages from believers all over the world who were struggling with the same terrifying question. Sarah, a worship leader, wrote, I've been leading worship for 15 years and people always tell me how anointed I am, how my voice brings them into God's presence. But I realized recently that I love the applause more than I love God. When people praise my singing, I feel alive. When they don't notice me, I feel empty. Have I been worshiping worship instead of worshiping God? David, a missionary, confessed, I've spent 12 years on the mission field, and everyone back home thinks I'm so sacrificial and devoted. But the truth is, I love the identity of being a missionary. I love telling stories about my work that make people admire me. I love feeling like I'm more committed than regular Christians. Is my entire missionary career just an elaborate way of feeding my pride? Jennifer, a longtime Christian, asked, I go to church every Sunday. I read my Bible. I pray. I serve in ministry. I do everything a good Christian is supposed to do. But if I'm honest, I do it all because it's what I'm supposed to do, not because I actually love God. I follow the rules, but I don't have a relationship. Would Jesus accept that? Or would he say, I never really knew him? I mean, honestly, these messages revealed something that shocked me. Here were sincere believers who understood theology, who were active in ministry, who looked like model Christians from the outside. But they were genuinely uncertain about whether Jesus would accept them because they could see that their motivations were all wrong. You know what struck me about every single message? These people weren't questioning their salvation because they had committed some terrible sin. They were questioning it because they had realized that everything they did for God was actually about themselves. Their service was self-serving. Their worship was self-focused. Their entire spiritual life was built around getting something for themselves rather than genuinely loving God. And that's when I realized something bigger was happening here. God wasn't just stirring my heart to understand this issue. He was preparing to reveal the one fundamental reason why he rejects believers who think they're saved. The reason that has nothing to do with getting doctrine right or avoiding certain sins, but everything to do with the actual condition of the human heart. It was a Thursday night when I finally worked up the courage to ask Jesus this question directly. I had been carrying it in my heart for weeks, honestly terrified of what his answer might reveal about my own spiritual condition. You know those moments when you realize that some questions could completely overturn your entire understanding of your relationship with God? This was one of those moments. I was in my prayer room, surrounded by all the messages from believers struggling with this same fear, when I fell to my knees and cried out with desperation I'd never felt before about this topic. Jesus, I prayed, I need to understand your heart about this. Why do you reject some believers who think they're saved? What's the one thing that makes the difference between those you accept and those you turn away? I need to know your truth about this, even if it devastates me. You know what happened next? The presence of Jesus filled my room with such intensity that I began trembling before he even spoke. But this wasn't just his comforting presence. This was the judge examining hearts, the bridegroom separating true love from religious performance, the king distinguishing between genuine servants and those who served themselves. While using his name, Jonathan, came a voice filled with both infinite love and absolute authority that made my entire body shake. You have asked me about the one reason I reject believers, and I will show you exactly what separates those I accept from those I turn away. But prepare yourself. What you are about to learn will challenge everything you think you know about salvation, faith, and what it means to be mine. I mean, honestly, I thought I was prepared for his answer. But you know what? Nobody is prepared for what Jesus is about to reveal about the one thing that determines whether God accepts or rejects a believer. Look, Jesus commanded, and I will show you my people as I see them, and you will understand the one difference that matters more than anything else. Suddenly, it was as if I was seeing believers around the world from Jesus' perspective, and what I saw made my heart overflow with both joy and absolute terror. I saw millions of people who attended church regularly, who read their Bibles, who prayed, who served in ministry, who did everything that Christians are supposed to do. From the outside, they all looked remarkably similar, active, committed, faithful believers. But when Jesus looked at them, he saw something completely different. He saw two distinct groups that were invisible to human observation but absolutely clear to divine perception. These, Jesus said, gesturing to the first group, are those I will accept. And these, he said, indicating the second group with grief that made me weep, are those I will reject, no matter how much they did in my name. But Lord, I asked, my voice shaking, what's the difference? They both look like believers. They both serve you. They both call you Lord. What separates those you accept from those you reject? His answer was so simple, so fundamental, and so devastating that I felt like everything I thought I knew about Christianity was being torn down and rebuilt from the foundation. The one reason I reject believers, Jesus said with intensity that made the spiritual atmosphere around us crackle with power, is this: they never actually wanted me. They wanted what I could give them. They wanted heaven, they wanted blessings, they wanted purpose, they wanted community, they wanted to feel good about themselves. But they never wanted me. The words hit me like a physical blow because I could immediately see the truth in every spiritual struggle I'd ever witnessed or experienced myself. As he spoke, I began to see the spiritual reality behind religious activity. Instead of people pursuing relationship with God, I saw people pursuing benefits from God. Instead of hearts that loved Jesus, I saw hearts that loved what Jesus could provide. Instead of genuine worship, I saw transactional religion. Every person who comes to me for what I can give them rather than for who I am is building their faith on a foundation that will not stand. Jesus continued, his tone becoming more intense. They call me Lord, but they treat me like a vending machine. They worship me, but they're really worshiping the feelings worship gives them. They serve me, but they're really serving their own need for significance. I watched in horror as he showed me the internal reality of people who looked like devoted Christians but whose hearts were completely focused on themselves. Their prayers were wish lists. Their worship was emotional self-medication. Their service was resume building. Their entire relationship with God was about getting something for themselves. But here's what will shock you even more, Jesus said. The people I reject are often the most religiously active. They're the ones who can quote scripture, who lead ministries, who have impressive testimonies. But all of their activity is motivated by what they want, not by love for me. He showed me pastors who built churches to feel important, worship leaders who led worship to feel talented, missionaries who served to feel heroic, teachers who taught to feel knowledgeable, givers who gave to feel generous, all of them doing the right things for completely wrong reasons. This isn't love, Jesus explained as I watched people making lifelong commitments to Christian service based on self-centered motivations. This is transaction. This is using me to get what they really want. And on Judgment Day, when I examine their hearts and see that they never actually wanted me, I will tell them the truth. I never knew you. But then Jesus showed me someone from the other group, and the contrast was stunning. Look at Maria, Jesus instructed, showing me a woman whose external Christian activity was far less impressive than the religious performers I'd just seen. Maria didn't lead any ministries. She wasn't a Bible teacher or worship leader. She didn't have an impressive testimony or a large platform. From the outside, she looked like an ordinary, unremarkable Christian. But when Jesus looked at her heart, I saw something that took my breath away. Maria genuinely loves me, Jesus explained with joy that was contagious. She doesn't serve me to feel important. She serves me because she loves me. She doesn't worship me to get emotional highs. She worships me because she treasures who I am. She doesn't pray to get things from me. She prays because she wants to be with me. I watched as Maria lived her daily life with Jesus as her actual treasure, not just her ticket to heaven or her source of blessings. When she prayed, she talked to him like someone she genuinely loved. When she worshiped, her focus was entirely on him, not on how worship made her feel. When she served, it was an overflow of love, not a performance to gain approval. Maria will be accepted, Jesus said with delight, because she actually wants me, not what I can give her, not the benefits of knowing me, not the identity of being a Christian. She wants me. But you know what Jesus told me, that will either give you confidence or convict you about your own relationship with him. The difference between Maria and the religious performers is not their level of activity or their theological knowledge, Jesus explained. The difference is that Maria's heart is oriented toward me, while their hearts are oriented toward themselves. She loves me. They love what I can do for them. How can someone know which category they're in? I asked, terrified of the answer. By examining what they actually want, Jesus replied. By looking honestly at their motivations and asking whether they're pursuing me or pursuing benefits from me. Then Jesus began showing me the specific ways this one fundamental issue manifests in believers' lives. And honestly, what he revealed will either assure you that you genuinely love him or wake you up to the reality that you've been using him to get what you really want. The first way people use me instead of loving me, Jesus explained, is that they come to me primarily for heaven, not for relationship. They want eternal life, but they don't want me. They want to avoid hell, but they don't want to know me. Their entire faith is built on getting a benefit, not on loving a person. I watched as Jesus showed me two people who had both accepted Christ at the same evangelistic event 10 years earlier. From the outside, they looked remarkably similar. Both attended church. Both called themselves Christians. Both believed they were saved. Look at Thomas, Jesus instructed, showing me the first man. I saw Thomas's conversion experience from Jesus' perspective. When Thomas had walked forward at that altar call, he was genuinely terrified of hell and desperately wanted to go to heaven. He prayed the prayer, believed he was saved, and began attending church regularly. Thomas came to me for fire insurance. Jesus explained with sadness. He wanted to avoid hell and get to heaven, but he never actually wanted me. Over the past 10 years, he's done Christian activities, but he's never pursued relationship with me. He reads his Bible out of duty, not desire. He prays when he needs something, not because he wants to talk to me. He goes to church because Christians are supposed to, not because he loves being in my presence. I watched as Thomas's life over the past decade demonstrated consistent religious activity but zero evidence of actually loving Jesus. He followed the rules, but he never pursued the relationship. He wanted the benefits of Christianity, but he didn't want Christ. Thomas will be rejected, Jesus said with grief, because he never wanted me. He wanted heaven. He wanted forgiveness. He wanted eternal life. But he never wanted me. But then Jesus showed me the second person, a woman named Rachel. Rachel also came forward that night, Jesus explained. But watch the difference in her heart. I saw Rachel's conversion experience. Yes, she was initially motivated by fear of hell and desire for heaven. But after she prayed to receive Christ, something happened that never happened with Brian. She actually met me, Jesus said with joy. She didn't just get fire insurance. She encountered a person. And once she met me, everything changed. I watched as Rachel's faith transformed from transaction to relationship. She started reading the Bible because she wanted to know Jesus better. She prayed because she enjoyed talking to him. She went to church because she loved worshiping him and being with his people. Over 10 years, I saw Rachel's love for Jesus deepen and mature. She made decisions based on what would please him. She sacrificed her own desires to serve his purposes. She talked about him with genuine affection, not just religious obligation. Rachel will be accepted, Jesus said with delight, because she doesn't just want heaven, she wants me. Yes, she's grateful for eternal life, but I am her treasure, not just the benefits I provide. The second way people use me, instead of loving me, Jesus continued, is that they serve me to feel significant, not because they love me. They build ministries to build their own sense of importance. They lead worship to feel talented. They teach to feel knowledgeable. They give to feel generous. All of their service is about feeding their own ego, not about loving me. I watched as Jesus showed me two ministry leaders who both had impressive platforms and active service. Look at Pastor David, Jesus instructed. I saw David's heart as he led his large, successful church. From the outside, he looked like an incredibly devoted servant of God. He preached powerful sermons, led strategic initiatives, built a thriving ministry. But when Jesus looked at his heart, I saw something that made me sick. David loves being a pastor more than he loves me, Jesus explained. He loves the respect people give him. He loves the feeling of being important. He loves seeing his church grow because it validates his significance. When people praise his preaching, he feels alive. When they criticize him, he feels devastated. His entire identity is wrapped up in his ministry success, not in his relationship with me. I watched as David made ministry decisions based on what would make him look good, what would grow his platform, what would increase his influence. He prayed before making decisions, but his prayers were really asking Jesus to bless what he had already decided to do. David will be rejected, Jesus said with grief, because he's been building his own kingdom while using my name. He calls me Lord, but he's really his own Lord. He serves me, but he's really serving his need to feel important. But then Jesus showed me another ministry leader, a woman named Susan, who led a much smaller, less impressive ministry. Susan doesn't have David's platform or success, Jesus explained, but watch her heart. I saw Susan's internal reality as she served in her small ministry. She didn't get much recognition. She didn't have impressive numbers to report. She didn't receive praise or validation from others. But when Jesus looked at her heart, I saw pure love. Susan serves me because she loves me, Jesus said with joy. She doesn't need her ministry to be successful to feel significant because her significance comes from being loved by me. She doesn't need people's praise because my approval is enough. She serves in obscurity because she's not serving to be seen. She's serving because she loves me and wants to help my people. I watched as Susan made ministry decisions based entirely on what would serve others and honor Jesus, with zero concern for how it would make her look. She prayed genuinely seeking God's will, willing to do whatever he asked, even if it meant staying small and unknown. Susan will be accepted, Jesus said with delight, because she serves me out of love, not out of need for significance. The third way people use me instead of loving me, Jesus explained, is that they worship me for the feelings worship gives them, not because they treasure who I am. They love the emotional high of worship music. They love feeling close to me during powerful services. But they don't actually love me. They love the experience of worship, not the object of worship. I watched as Jesus showed me two worship leaders with completely different heart orientations. Look at Michael, Jesus instructed. I saw Michael leading worship with passion and skill. The congregation was moved. People were crying, raising their hands, singing with abandon. From every external measure, it was powerful, anointed worship. But when Jesus looked at Michael's heart, I saw something devastating. Michael loves the feeling of leading worship more than he loves me, Jesus explained. He loves the rush of performing. He loves seeing people respond to his music. He loves the identity of being a worship leader. When worship is powerful, he feels validated. When it falls flat, he feels like a failure. His entire sense of worth is tied to how well worship goes, not to his relationship with me. I watched as Michael prepared for worship by practicing his performance, not by spending time with Jesus. He chose songs based on what would create emotional impact, not on what would honor God. He led worship as a performer, not as a worshiper. Michael will be rejected, Jesus said with sadness, because he's been worshiping worship, not worshiping me. He uses my name and my music, but his heart is focused on himself. But then Jesus showed me another worship leader, named Jennifer, who led worship in a much simpler, less polished way. Jennifer doesn't have Michael's talent or skill, Jesus explained, but watch her heart. I saw Jennifer leading worship with her focus entirely on Jesus. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to create an emotional experience. She was genuinely worshiping and inviting others to join her in treasuring who Jesus is. Jennifer loves me, Jesus said with joy. She doesn't lead worship to feel talented or to get people's approval. She leads worship because she genuinely treasures who I am and wants others to see my beauty. When worship is powerful, she's grateful that people encountered me. When it's simple and quiet, she's content because she got to worship me. I watched as Jennifer prepared for worship by spending time with Jesus, letting her love for him overflow into the songs she chose and the way she led. She wasn't concerned with performance. She was focused on helping people see Jesus. Jennifer will be accepted, Jesus said with delight, because she actually worships me, not the experience of worship. As these examples continued, I felt the weight of conviction settling over me. I could see myself in so many of these patterns. How many times had my prayers been primarily about getting things? How many times had my service been about building my platform? How many times had my worship been about emotional experiences rather than genuinely treasuring Jesus? But Jesus, I said, my voice breaking with emotion, I can see all of these patterns in my own life. I've been using you. I thought I loved you, but so much of my faith has been about getting things from you rather than actually treasuring you. How do I change? How do I move from using you to genuinely loving you? His expression was filled with both compassion for my brokenness and hope for my transformation. That, Jonathan, is the question that separates those who will be rejected from those who will be accepted, he said, because recognizing that you've been using me is the first step toward actually loving me. Most people never get this far. They defend their religious performance and insist they love me when they've never examined their actual motivations. But here's what you need to understand, he continued, his voice becoming more intense. Moving from using me to loving me requires more than just trying harder or feeling bad about your mixed motives. It requires a fundamental transformation of your heart's orientation, and that transformation doesn't happen through religious effort. It happens through revelation. I felt my heart racing as I sensed we were approaching the most crucial part of this entire encounter. What kind of revelation? I asked. The revelation of who I actually am, Jesus replied. Because here's the truth that will change everything. People use me when they don't really know me. They relate to me as a concept, a doctrine, a religious figure, a source of benefits, but they don't actually know me as a person. And you cannot love someone you don't know. The spiritual atmosphere around us began to shift in ways I can barely describe. It was like the air itself became saturated with presence, with reality, with truth so concentrated that I could almost taste it. The transformation from using me to loving me, Jesus explained, doesn't happen through trying harder to have pure motives. It doesn't happen through feeling guilty about your selfishness. It doesn't happen through religious discipline or spiritual practices. It happens through one thing and one thing only: seeing me as I actually am. He paused, and his eyes held mine with an intensity that made me feel like he was looking into the deepest parts of my soul. Because here's the truth that religion doesn't teach, he continued. You cannot love someone you don't know. And most people who claim to love me have never actually seen me. They've seen religion's version of me. They've seen their own projection of me. They've seen what they need me to be. But they've never seen me. As he spoke, something began to happen in the spiritual space around us. It was like layers of religious imagery, doctrinal frameworks, and cultural assumptions about Jesus were being peeled away, revealing something underneath that was both more beautiful and more challenging than anything I'd ever imagined. I'm going to let you see me now, Jesus said, not as religion has portrayed me, not as your needs have shaped me, not as your fears have limited me, but as I actually am. And I need to warn you, what you're about to see will ruin you for religious Christianity forever. Because once you see me as I am, you'll never be satisfied with religion about me again. What happened next is almost impossible to put into words because it wasn't just visual. It was like every sense I had, physical and spiritual, was suddenly awakened to perceive reality at a level I'd never experienced before. I saw Jesus, but not the way I'd seen him in previous encounters. This was different. This was like seeing him without any filters, without any religious packaging, without any of the ways I'd unconsciously tried to make him fit my expectations. The first thing that overwhelmed me was his beauty, not physical attractiveness, though there was that too, but a beauty that went so much deeper. It was the beauty of perfect love, perfect wisdom, perfect strength combined with perfect gentleness. It was the beauty of someone who was fully God and fully human, who contained all power but wielded it with complete restraint, who knew everything but loved anyway. I fell to my knees without even realizing I was doing it, tears streaming down my face, because I was seeing something my soul had been longing for my entire life without knowing it. This is who I am, Jesus said gently. Not a cosmic vending machine, not a divine life coach, not a religious figurehead, not a means to an end. I am a person who loves you more than you can comprehend, a person who delights in you, a person who wants to be known by you, not just used by you. As I looked at him, I began to see aspects of his character that I'd never truly understood before. I saw his joy, not the somber, serious, religious Jesus I'd unconsciously imagined, but someone who laughed, who delighted in creation, who found pleasure in relationship, who celebrated goodness wherever he found it. I saw his strength, not the weak, passive Jesus of sentimental Christianity, but someone with the power to speak universes into existence, who could command demons with a word, who faced down death itself and won. I saw his tenderness, not weakness, but the kind of strength that can afford to be gentle. The way he looked at broken people, at sinners, at the rejected and despised with such love that it made me weep. I saw his holiness. Not the cold, distant holiness of religious performance, but a purity so complete, so radiant, that it made me aware of every shadow in my own heart, yet somehow his holiness didn't push me away. It drew me in, made me want to be clean, made me long to be like him. I saw his wisdom, not just knowledge, but the kind of deep understanding that sees through every pretense, every self-deception, every religious mask. He knew me completely, saw every selfish motivation, every mixed motive, every time I'd used him instead of loved him, and he loved me anyway. But here's what breaks me completely, Jesus said, and I could hear emotion in his voice. Here's what people miss about who I am. I don't just love humanity in general. I love you specifically. I don't just die for the world. I die for you. I don't just want worshipers. I want you. As he spoke, I saw something that changed everything. I saw the way Jesus looked at me, not with disappointment over my failures, not with frustration over my mixed motives, not with the cold assessment of a judge, but with the delight of someone who genuinely treasured me, who found joy in my existence, who wanted relationship with me not because he needed something from me, but because he genuinely loved me. Jonathan, he said, and the way he said my name made me feel like I was the only person in the universe at that moment. I don't want you to use me. I want you to know me. I don't want your religious performance. I want your heart. I don't want you to serve me out of obligation or fear or need for validation. I want you to serve me because you love me and you know I love you. The revelation of his love for me, not as a concept, but as an experienced reality, did something to my heart that years of religious teaching had never accomplished. It made me want him, not want things from him, not want to use him for my purposes, but want him, want to be with him, want to know him better, want to please him because I loved him. Is this what it means to actually love you? I asked through my tears. This desire to be with you, to know you, to please you, not because I'm trying to earn something, but because I genuinely treasure you. Yes, Jesus said with joy that filled the entire spiritual space. This is love. Not perfect performance, not pure motives all the time, not never struggling with selfishness, but this fundamental orientation of your heart toward me as a person you treasure, not a resource you use. The transformation from using me to loving me happens through 3 specific steps, Jesus said. And these aren't religious formulas or spiritual techniques. These are the actual process of moving from transaction to relationship, from using me to loving me. The first step is brutal honesty about your current condition, Jesus explained. You must stop defending your religious performance and admit that you've been using me. You must acknowledge that your prayers have been primarily about getting things, that your service has been about feeding your ego, that your worship has been about emotional experiences, that your entire faith has been oriented around what you can get from me, rather than genuinely loving me. I watched as Jesus showed me people who took this first step. It was painful. It required them to admit things about themselves that shattered their self-image as devoted Christians. But it was also liberating because pretense is exhausting and honesty is the beginning of freedom. The second step is asking me to reveal myself to you as I actually am, Jesus continued, not as you need me to be, not as religion has portrayed me, but as I actually am. And you must be willing to let go of your preferred version of me to encounter the real me. I watched as people prayed this prayer with genuine desperation. Jesus, I don't want to use you anymore. I want to know you as you actually are. Show me who you really are, even if it disrupts everything I think I know about you. And I watched as Jesus responded to these prayers by revealing himself in ways that were both more beautiful and more challenging than people expected. The third step is responding to the revelation of who I am by reorienting your entire life around loving me, Jesus explained. This isn't about trying harder to be a good Christian. This is about letting your love for me become the motivation for everything you do. I watched as people who had encountered Jesus as he actually was began to live completely differently. Not because they were following new rules, but because their hearts had been captured by someone they genuinely loved. This is what transformation looks like, Jesus said. Not perfection, but reorientation. Not sinlessness, but a heart that genuinely loves me and wants to please me, even when it struggles and fails. As our encounter began to wind down, Jesus placed his hands on my shoulders one final time. The question I will ask every person on Judgment Day is not, "Did you do religious activities in my name?" he said. The question is, "Did you actually know me? Did you love me? Or did you just use me?" And the only way to ensure you can answer that question correctly is to start pursuing genuine relationship with me right now, not tomorrow, not after you get your life together, not after you become a better Christian. Right now, today, this moment, stop using me and start loving me. Stop performing religion and start pursuing relationship. Stop asking what you can get from me and start asking who I actually am. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my living room as the sun rose over Los Angeles, but everything had changed. The religious frameworks I'd built my faith on felt hollow and empty. The platform I'd been building felt meaningless. The impressive ministry credentials felt like worthless paper. But in place of all that religious machinery, I felt something I'd never truly felt before. Genuine love for Jesus. Not love for what he could give me. Not love for the identity of being a Christian. Not love for the benefits of faith, but love for him, for who he actually was, for the person I had finally begun to actually know. Over the past 6 days since this encounter, I've been processing what it means to reorient my entire life around loving Jesus instead of using him. And I can tell you that it's both harder and easier than I expected. It's harder because it requires constant honesty about my motivations. Every time I pray, I have to ask myself, am I talking to Jesus because I want something or because I want him? Every time I serve, I have to examine whether I'm building my platform or serving his purposes. Every time I worship, I have to check whether I'm seeking emotional experiences or genuinely treasuring who he is. But it's also easier because genuine love is so much more satisfying than religious performance. Talking to Jesus because I love him is so much more fulfilling than praying to get things. Serving him because I want to please him is so much more joyful than serving to build my ego. Worshipping him because I treasure who he is brings so much more peace than trying to manufacture emotional experiences. The truth about why God rejects believers is both more devastating and more hopeful than anything I'd ever imagined. It's devastating because it means that millions of people who think they're saved, who have done all the right religious activities, who call Jesus Lord, will be rejected because they never actually wanted him. They wanted his benefits, but they never wanted him. But it's also hopeful because it means that transformation is possible right now, today, this moment. You don't have to wait until you're perfect. You don't have to get your life together first. You don't have to become a better Christian. You just have to stop using Jesus and start loving him. You just have to stop performing religion and start pursuing relationship. You just have to honestly admit that you've been using him and genuinely ask to know him as he actually is. Let me pray for everyone who needs this revelation about the one reason God rejects believers. Father, thank you for revealing the truth that can save us from religious performance and lead us into genuine relationship. For every person watching who has been using you instead of loving you, who has been performing religion instead of pursuing relationship, who has wanted your benefits but never actually wanted you, I pray for the courage to be honest about their condition. Give them the grace to admit that they've been using you. Break through their religious defenses and their self-deception. Show them that you're not looking for perfect performance. You're looking for honest hearts that genuinely want to know you and love you. For those who have spent years doing religious activities in your name but have never actually known you, reveal yourself to them as you actually are. Let them see your beauty, your love, your desire for relationship with them. Let them encounter you in a way that transforms their entire orientation from using you to loving you. For those who are terrified that they might be rejected on Judgment Day, show them that the path to acceptance isn't more religious performance, it's genuine relationship. It's actually wanting you, not just wanting what you can give them. Transform our prayers from wish lists to conversations. Transform our service from ego feeding to genuine love. Transform our worship from emotional experiences to genuine treasuring of who you are. Transform our entire faith from transaction to relationship. Help us to stop asking, what can I get from God? And start asking, who is God? And how can I know him better? Help us to make you our treasure, not just our resource. Help us to love you, not just use you. And for those who are just beginning to realize that they've never actually wanted you, thank you that it's not too late. Thank you that transformation can begin right now, this moment, with honest admission and genuine desire to know you as you actually are. In Jesus' name, amen. If this message has exposed the truth about your relationship with God, please don't ignore it. Don't defend your religious performance. Don't make excuses. Just be honest. Have you been using God or have you been loving God? Have you wanted Jesus or have you just wanted what he could give you? And if you realize that you've been using him, don't despair, because that honest admission is the beginning of transformation. That recognition is the first step toward genuine relationship. Tell Jesus right now, I've been using you. I've wanted your benefits, but I haven't wanted you. I'm sorry. I want to change. Show me who you actually are. Help me to love you, not just use you. And then watch what happens. Because Jesus doesn't reject honest hearts that genuinely want to know him. He rejects religious performers who use his name while never actually wanting him. The question that will determine your eternal destiny isn't, did you do religious activities? The question is, did you actually want Jesus? How you answer that question starting today will change everything.